WiSP Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello and welcome to the WiSP Sports Desk here. This is Season 2, Episode 8, and I'm Chris Stafford, and I'm joined by my friend over in England, Nancy Gillen. This week, I think most of our stories surround the coronavirus or the IOC, don't they? That's what we're going to lead with.
Yeah, it's been quite a big news for big week for news, but it's all kind of been about the same issue, which is coronavirus cancelling sporting events around the world. Really, I don't think there's many countries that hasn't been affected by it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the position, of course, the International Olympic Committee, IOC, they are trying to manage the message right now, aren't they, about the Tokyo Olympic Games, which, you know, though they don't start till July, if they're going to cancel or postpone them, then they need at least 2 months ahead of time to do that, don't they?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week when we said that I think it's around May time that they've said they're going to decide. And I was watching, so the IOC were having a meeting today, and I was watching the press conference that happened after, and every single question for the IOC president, Thomas Bach, was about coronavirus. I think he was starting to get slightly annoyed because he was kind of saying, I'm not going to start getting into any kind of speculation. And even if he was, I do kind of sympathise, because they can't really make a decision now because they have absolutely no idea what the situation is going to be like in 2 to 3 months. So for them, it is just kind of a waiting game. And obviously, they're just going to try and keep everything calm and not make anyone panic in the meantime. So that, you know, it's just kind of business as usual for them.
Yeah, I think that's the message they're trying to, you know, portray here. But on the other hand, the Japanese Olympic Committee, they're giving out a different message, aren't they? In terms of that, well, this could be postponed until for a couple of months at least, pushed back further. Do you think that's realistic to do that?
I personally don't think it is, just because it's not kind of just the sport that's happening as well. It's also, you know, all the athletes are training for July. And it would kind of mess everything up if it was moved a few months back. And it's kind of like, where would they stay? Because I think the athletes' village is being sold off kind of straight after the Olympics. And there's kind of, hotels are being booked, flights are being booked, like kind of venues are being prepped for that time. Like, I think when you look beyond the sport, there's too many logistical issues to postpone it. I don't know whether they would. I know cancelling it would be quite drastic, but I did see someone say today that, you know, maybe they'd almost rather cancel it than kind of have a half-hearted games where a lot of athletes maybe wouldn't be able to go, or you wouldn't have any spectators or so on. I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
Well, there's also the training schedule, right, for athletes and in equestrian sport for horses as well. I mean, you've got, you know, other factors as well with qualifications that are still happening, and so many moving parts here that to actually push it back 2 months, it is huge. It's almost better to cancel it, it seems to me, in a way. I mean, it's a tragedy either way, isn't it? Because it's such a huge sporting event, and there's so many thousands of athletes and others, of course, that are basing their livelihoods really on an Olympic game. So it's going to be devastating if it does get cancelled. But as you say, it's a wait and see game. And the IOC are just pushing ahead as if it's all going to be okay. Meanwhile, all of these other sporting events are being cancelled left and right.
Yeah, and I think a problem is as well, there's a lot of Olympic qualifying events that are also being cancelled or rescheduled. So I think the question is as well, even if the Olympics go ahead, there's going to be some athletes that maybe weren't able to qualify because they couldn't compete in an event. So I think the IOC also have to work out how they're going to do that fairly. Say if a qualifier can't take place, how are they going to choose which athletes then take the spots at the places at the games. So that even now it's a headache for them, because they're going to have to try and work out what to do about qualifying as well.
Yes, exactly. It has all those implications too. But in the meanwhile, the IOC is really hitting the news here. And there's a few other stories that we want to cover here this week. And one just dropped this morning, and that is their commitment to, I like the way their headlines go. They are sending extremely strong message that gender balance is going to be a reality at the Olympic Games. Extremely strong message. They feel passionately about this. How are they trying to convince us that, there will be full gender representation across all national Olympic committees? This would be for the first time ever. And they're also saying that one female and one male flag bearer will be at the opening ceremony. I think, this is, they have to be seen to be saying this, and hopefully it will be a reality.
Yeah, I hope so. And like you said, it's quite recent news. So I'm not sure if I've understood this right, but I think they're going to offer, if it's a tiny country who only kind of qualify one athlete, and say that athlete is a man, it seems like they're going to offer an additional quota place to that country, so a woman can also qualify. So essentially, it seems like they're going to ensure that there is definitely a complete gender balance, which is what I understand from it. So I'm not sure if that is correct, but if that is the case, then I suppose that is good news. And the flag bearer thing as well is, it's kind of one of those things that is more symbolic than actual kind of tangible change. But I suppose it still is quite positive, that maybe countries like Saudi Arabia, which kind of have only started to send women to the games, now they're being encouraged to also have a female flag bearer. It is quite good, I suppose, in terms of representation.
Well, what they're saying is that 4 international federations now will also move to gender-based events for the first time. That's canoeing, rowing, shooting, and weightlifting. And at discipline level, gender balance will be achieved in BMX racing, motorbiking, and mountain biking, and freestyle wrestling. And in terms of athlete quotas, 6 in IFs, international federations, will move to gender balance for the first time in canoe, judo, rowing, sailing, shooting, and weightlifting. So, they're using this, they're putting this on the agenda, I think, in a meaningful way. I mean, I think there's, some sincerity to this. So it is meaningful. But I think also there's a lot of social pressure these days to do the right thing. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, as we've talked about a lot, it's, when something that's in a public level, they're normally very good at ensuring a gender balance. But as we've discovered, it's in things like sports governance and federations, which is not in the public eye, where it's actually the real issue. So it's about getting a gender equality across the whole board, rather than only on the actual playing field.
And also, sticking with the IOC, they confirmed, and I read this article on Inside the Games by your colleague there, that the IOC has confirmed existing guidelines on transgender athlete eligibility to remain for Tokyo 2020. Did you catch up with that story as well on the website this morning?
Yeah, I did. And my colleague that wrote the story, he was, they had a press conference with Richard Budgett, who's the IOC medical, I think he's the chief medical officer. So he sent me the voice recording of that press conference. So I could hear kind of what the thought process was behind that report. And it was very interesting, actually. It was kind of saying that they didn't want to they had said they would introduce new guidelines before Tokyo, but I think they've kind of realised it's such a far-reaching issue, and it impacts a lot of athletes in different ways, and people have very different views on it, that can kind of be quite extreme sometimes, that they realise that they actually really need to take their time and be quite thorough in how they develop their transgender policy. It was also quite interesting to hear some of the questions that the journalists at that conference asked as well, because one asked how many transgender athletes are we even talking about competing at the Olympics, realistically, and budget, he answered there's only really, three or four athletes who they haven't even qualified yet, but potentially could qualify. So when you think, there's 11,000 athletes competing at the Olympics, that's just such a small majority, really.
Yeah, it really is. And I read that they would have to, the athletes would have to declare that their gender identity is female, and with the declaration unable to be changed for a minimum of 4 years. They're looking at that. It's such a difficult topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how long they have to be identifying as a woman before they're eligible.
Yeah, it's World Rugby. They held a workshop last week, and it was kind of the first of its kind, really. And I quite liked the way they did it. They haven't made any decisions yet, but they essentially held a workshop and invited kind of representative from every single area. So it was kind of like science, medicine, law. So in terms of, if someone gets injured because they've been playing with a trans athlete, and what are kind of the legal implications, ethical implications. They invited human rights groups. They invited trans players to talk as well. So they had a workshop where literally everyone gave their view. And then they're now the working group from that are now going to go away and come up with a policy. So the IOC seemed to sound like they were also going to do something quite similar. So yeah, like you said, it's a really, really complicated and hard issue. So I'm quite glad that they're actually taking the time to really assess it and kind of hear from all viewpoints.
Yes, exactly. Well, we'll continue to follow that for you here on the WiSP Sports Desk every week. And staying with the Olympic Games and looking ahead actually to 2024, when the Olympic Games will be hosted by Paris in France. And they're already splitting up the venues there. And you're going to have to go a long way to follow the surfing. You're going to go all the way to Tahiti. That seems to be a bit extreme. Is that the closest they can find the waves for surfing, Nancy?
No, it's not. And the first I heard of this was last summer. I went to the Paris 2024 Coordination Commission. So when the Paris 2024 Organising Committee meet with the IOC, and yeah, the first I'd heard of it was the Paris 2024 president rejecting. He said that they definitely weren't going to create an artificial wave in France and hold it there. So then the options after that were Tahiti was on the cards, but there also are a lot of places in France. So Biarritz, I think, is a really famous place to surf in France, and there's a few other venues as well that they submitted to host surfing. It's gone with Tahiti, and it was an idea, I think, that when it was first mentioned was deemed to be kind of ridiculous, and I think the IOC were quite against it, and it's just gradually become now more accepted and finally been approved. And our theory is, inside the Games, is that area in the world, which are obviously have quite a lot of French influence, and I think there's still a bit of kind of French can't think, governance almost. They're having a referendum soon for complete independence, and I think the idea behind it is if they hold some of the Olympics there, it proves that they're still, that they view Tahiti as important in kind of the French, in the French community and so on. So it's almost kind of persuading people when they have that referendum to vote to stay with the French. So that is the theory behind that, which is kind of, we've talked in previous podcasts about the whole kind of political influence in sport and whether there is sports and politics, and that just shows how massively intertwined it is. The fact that they've really moved it for that.
Yes, totally. When they didn't need to. It's part of French Polynesia, though, isn't it? Tahiti.
Yeah, that's what I was. The word that escaped
but
me.
But it's still a long way from France. When as you say, there's Biarritz. There's beautiful places where they could surf there. But and it's interesting that they should make such a bold political move, because it's one of the 4 new sports. So is this the way it's going to be for new sports that come to the table? Are they going to be considered? First of all, whether they can be a part of the one venue, or they're going to have to be farmed out far and wide. And the others, just for people's information here, the other 3 sports that are going to be added to Paris 2024 are breaking, skateboarding, skateboarding, excuse me, and sport climbing. Climbing, of course, is extremely popular. That's a lot easier. They just build a wall, right? And they can build a wall anywhere.
Yeah, I think all the others are quite portable. Like you can almost do them anywhere. I suppose surfing does have to have, you do have to have good waves. Like you can't really have surfing in. I suppose you could have surfing in England. Like there's places to surf, but
Cornwall, right?
Cornwall, yeah.
The north coast. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need to have good waves. I've been to like a few surfing things, and I know you need to have good waves. So I suppose in certain countries, if they are hosting the Olympics in the future, they will have to look at doing surfing maybe further afield. But there's not really any excuse for France when surfing competitions happen there anyway, because France does have good waves. So yeah, it's a bit ridiculous, really.
Yeah, and I think if you're that far away from the main Olympic village and everything else that's Olympic, the main venues, you're so detached. I don't know how you can feel part of the Olympic Games when you're so far removed.
Yeah, I haven't. Surfing have kind of responded positively in public, as they kind of have to, but I would be very interested to know what the Surfing Federation and also surfing athletes, what they think about it, because I think you wouldn't feel part of the Olympic Games at all. It's almost kind of, what's the point of having been added to the program if you're not even are they going to be able to go to the opening ceremony? Like I don't think they're going to be really involved in any of that.
Yeah, exactly. So far removed from it. More IOC news. No, sorry, not the IOC news, but to the coronavirus news. I wanted to come back to that because I found a resource that I'm going to leave a link to in the show notes that you'll find on the website at wisports.com. That everything we talk about here on the show, there's more information, links to those stories at wisports.com. And one of those is an Olympic.org. There's athlete resources, and there's a coronavirus outbreak advice for athletes too, which I think that's really, really important. When you think some of these athletes, they don't train in isolation. Some of them, they are on a team or in a gym. They're in a very social environment. And so they have to be a little bit concerned about it. It's a very, often if it's indoors, a very sweaty environment too. So is that the right thing to say about athletes? It would be. I just think of going to a gym. It's, I would imagine a good place for germs to generate in a gym.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
So those resources will be available, as I said, in the show notes as well. And another cancellation or potential cancellation is coming up in the skiing world because the International Federation are considering the Alpine World Cup Finals. They're going to decide on that in a couple of days' time. Those finals are going to be held in Cortina d'Ampezzo in Italy, which, of course, is experiencing a lot of outbreaks and fatalities, too, of the coronavirus.
I think there was an event that it was alpine skiing that did take place in Italy last weekend, a weekend just gone, but it was limited spectators, I think. But then it got cancelled because of heavy snow anyway.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to move on to a couple of other stories here before we leave you this week, and some really good news for cricket. This is an equality story that you're going to want to hear. It's for a new series called The 100 that is involving some cities in the UK, the 100 cricket series, and equal prize money, although not equal pay, equal prize money, Nancy.
Yeah, equal. So I think the prize budget is £600,000, and that's going to be split equally between the competitions, which is, I think, really, really good news. Like the competition is completely new, so I think if they, there's kind of no traditions to go off, so they've got the room to introduce things like equal prize money. But unfortunately, I think people are quite happy about it, and it's a real step forward. Especially when you've got other competitions. We've talked about the Six Nations not offering any prize money for the women's competition, but unfortunately the prize money, the pay is still unequal, and it's quite significantly different. So the highest pay for men is £125,000 for, I presume, just to play in the competition, which I think is 9 matches. And the highest women's is 15,000.
Significant difference there.
Yeah,
huge.
That's just, yeah, I mean, £125,000 is, it sets you good for about, I don't know, like years. Well, £15,000 isn't even kind of minimum wage in terms of, an annual income. So that is, I think, a real difference. And the thing for me as well is that the games are being played as double headers. So the women's, they're being played in the same venues on the same days, and the women's fixture is going to be first and then the men's are going to be second. So it's kind of essentially the same competition. Like when you look at equal pay arguments, and it's essentially that women aren't getting paid the same amount for doing the exact same job as men are. In this situation, there's not much difference to what the women are doing compared to the men. Like potentially you might say there might be a little less of a crowd coming in early, so they won't be paying a ticket. But the fact that it is a double header, and I think they're kind of pitching the 100 as kind of a, a family friendly, like fun day out. So I presume people, paying for the day ticket, they go and watch the women's and the men's, and it's, they're essentially they're playing in the same competition, doing the exact same job. And I don't quite understand the pay disparity there, because it's massive, absolutely massive.
And I don't understand Heather Knight, who's the England captain, defending this, and others defending it.
Yeah.
The inequality in pay.
Yeah, I think maybe it's potentially because they're on a contract. Maybe they've run a contract with the thing. But yeah, she says it's about being realistic as well. The women's game has not been professional for that long. We've seen how the men's game has built, and the women's game will hopefully follow suit. Which, yeah, I mean, I suppose she is kind of obliged to maybe say something like that. And I do suppose probably for female cricketers, getting £15,000 is probably still a massive step forward. But yeah, it's kind of really hard to, I think, justify that gap.
Now, talking about dollar amounts, there's also a story coming out of gymnastics as well, about Ali Raisman, who was so outspoken in the Larry Nassar case, and Simone Biles, of course, who is top gymnast right now. They've both spoken out about the offer that the USA Gymnastics have made to the Nassar survivors, which is, again, it's a pittance. And I think they just expressed their disgust at that, because they've offered that lump sum, haven't they, of $215 million. But it's got to be accepted as a group. So if you split that up between all the victims, they're not going to get much change out of this.
No. Yeah, I think Simone Biles has tweeted how upset she is about it. I think, was it Raisman said it was offensive? And I think it is. It's almost disrespectful. It's such an awful thing that happened, and then it's just, yeah, it is disrespectful. But I think the problem with it is not justifying the actions of USA Gymnastics at all in this situation, but I think they're in a lot of debt. I think it's part of the plan for the organisation to come out of bankruptcy. So the organisation is currently completely bankrupt. So I imagine this is probably kind of like all they can offer at the moment to help them get out of financial difficulties. But it's still not acceptable, really. The situation is pretty awful.
Well, when you think there are 350 women who thought to have been abused by him, that's a lot of women. You split that up, that won't go very far. No,
definitely not. And it is kind of how inadequate, they've been since it all came out, and how the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, it's unbelievable how many kind of crises they go through, and how they just kind of make things worse for themselves constantly. But they just, it was an awful situation, and they could have actually, maybe made amends. But every time I read something about it, they've just made it worse and worse.
Yes, yeah. The hole just gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to an a story from athletics too, of a Rio athlete, 2016 Olympic steeplechase gold medalist, who has been given a 4-year ban that you reported on Inside the Games again.
Yeah, Ruth, I think it's Jebet. She won gold in the women's steeplechase at Rio, and yeah, she's been banned for 4 years. It was quite an interesting story when I was writing. Well, I wrote the main bit of the story, and it actually tested positive for EPO, which is a blood booster, in 2017. So that was 3 years ago, and she's only just received the ban. But I think she kind of refused to admit any kind of guilt for ages, and then finally she's been banned. But she keeps her Olympic gold, so for her it's probably not that. Obviously she can't run, but it's only for another 2 years, and she's still got her Olympic gold medal.
She's still got the medal, and she can still come back for Paris in 2024.
Yeah, and she's young. She's only 23 years old, so
yes,
yeah, we'll definitely see her again.
Plenty of time. All right, well, we're going to wrap up this week to talk about soccer, because this week we kick off, literally, the She Believes Cup. That hasn't been held up at all by the coronavirus. The first game takes place tomorrow, Thursday, in Orlando, Florida, and that will be a real ding-dong. That will be the USA playing England to kick them off. That'll be really fun to watch. I can't wait to watch that. If my phone rings during the game, tough. If anybody wants me during the game, sorry, not available. I'm looking forward to that. And then they go to Harrison, New Jersey on March the 8th, and March the 11th, Frisco, Texas. They're playing Spain and then Japan. All right, who's your money on then? I suppose you're going to be supporting England, but
yeah, I have to go with England. I can't not. Yeah, there's been quite a lot of fighting talk here already. I think Rachel Daly, who plays for Houston Dash, she said there's been a really good interview with her in the papers about how she went back to play for Houston Dash after the World Cup, and just everywhere was, like, welcome home to the world champions, and it was all Megan Rapinoe everywhere, and she just said it was literally rubbed in her face. So she says she wants revenge. Ellen White has said she wants revenge. So yeah, it's been a lot of fighting talk.
Yeah. All right. So what kind of margin? What's your prediction?
The thing is, I don't actually think we're going to win tomorrow. I think we're going to lose, but it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be 2-1 to the United States.
2-1. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really close, but the US... I really wish I could think that England are going to win, but the US are too good. So,
yeah, you're brave. I don't think I'm going to put a number on it. So, I think your prediction is pretty close as to what I would go for if I was to make one, because I do think the US will win, but I don't think they will deny England a goal. Well, I'd like to think they did, because we've been unbeaten since January 2019. So this could be the game that turns that form around.
Potentially, but England have been pretty poor, really, since the World Cup. Like, I don't really have that much faith in us, to be honest.
There's a loyal England supporter for you.
And just realistic. Like, being an England fan, you just have to be realistic, because it's always just disappointment.
All right, well, you know what they say, lower your expectations to avoid disappointment. So I think you've done that.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, before we go, we're going to tell people what we said after we recorded last week. We have this commitment. Both of us are going to buy a bicycle.
Oh, yeah.
Get out there and bike, because there's no excuse for Nancy, because she's walking to work now, driving to work now, when she's within cycling distance, right? On a nice day with a wind and a banner on your back. That would be a nice ride.
Yeah, it would be. I'm nowhere near getting a bike since last week. I haven't even thought about it.
Well, I did think about it, and I actually didn't do much about it, but I'm also committed to getting a bicycle again. I love biking. And I'm living in a large village, Middleburg, Virginia, which is a large village. And I could cycle. It's beautiful, beautiful countryside here. So really not much excuse for me. I love walking. I can walk everywhere. So my commitment is to bike. So whoever gets the bike first really gets bragging rights on the show.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's fair. Right. Anything else this week? Oh, have you seen any good films? I have to tell you about the film because I'm going to let you go first. Have you seen any good films lately?
I saw Parasite, the Oscar-winning film, on the plane. That was pretty good, yeah. Worth the Oscar.
Worth the Oscar. Yeah, I've heard that. I'm not sure that I can watch it. Not my genre. But I did go and see Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is now one of my favorite all-time films. It's just stunning. Cinematography is stunning. The whole thing is just beautiful. Every piece of it is a painting. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. So that's my pick. So we got 2 picks there. Our recommendations for the week: Parasite and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And don't forget to follow us on social media, of course, at WiSP Sports and at Nancy_Gillen. You can read everything that Nancy writes about on InsideTheGames.biz. Our show notes are at wisports.com, and Nancy and I will be back next week with another episode of the WiSP Sports Desk with all the top stories from around the world of women's sports. So until then, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.